Yes, welcome to a new episode of Bikeschmiede Geschichten. I always enjoy when we can get a bit of the complete or half-complete story behind such an ancient motorcycle. And in the case of this motorcycle, that is indeed the case. We were able to research it. And here we have something very special indeed. I think you can already see that it is something quite unique. Gnome Edron, a French motorcycle, or actually tank factory that built tanks for the Second World War, produced this motorcycle. One must say that the parts they had left over from tank production were used here for motorcycle construction, as all the components are oversized. And the motorcycle is an AX800, which is a boxer model built specifically for use in the Second World War. And yes, this motorcycle was left in the forest near Quedlinburg during the Second World War due to enemy fire. And an independent master mechanic found it in the forest while mushroom picking in 1962. So he was still peeking out of the forest floor with his backside, and he uncovered everything. He had always wanted his own machine, but never had the money for a new one. He decided to take the motorcycle home in 2001 and make it operational again. These bright ones existed, and we simply honor these bright ones here in our museum. And now comes the part about everything he had to change on this machine to get this motorcycle back on the road. The front wheel was no longer usable. It had completely rotted away over the years in the forest floor. He looked around and dug out the spare wheel from his car and fitted it into the fork here at the front. The engine was also no longer usable. Originally it contained a boxer engine, 800cc side valve, similar to that of a BMW, and it had of course become solid over the years due to the penetrating water and was no longer repairable. And there he looked in his workshop and found an NSU engine from 1928, a 600cc single-cylinder engine, which he had repaired and refurbished for a customer back then. However, the customer had not contacted him again, and now it had been sitting under his workbench for many years. He had decided that this would be the new heart for my machine. So I had to make a few changes here, adapting this chassis to the engine, which means fitting this huge single-cylinder engine here, making technical modifications, and installing these large wind deflectors so that this massive single-cylinder engine gets proper airflow. Then he soldered a small flap into the tank here to have good access to the spark plug now. The carburetor was missing, so he went back to his storage and found the Trabant carburetor. And then he said to himself, Trabant 600cc, NSU 600cc, that should work. And he built a flange for it, attached the carburetor, and lo and behold, the two components understood each other perfectly throughout the entire life of the motorcycle. The power transfer to the rear was actually the biggest challenge because the NSU originally has a chain drive, which means that a chain sprocket actually runs at that point. And Gnome Tron has the original shaft drive, which means that the shaft looks quite trustworthy, 3 sizes larger than it actually needed to be. And then he said, I'll just pour an aluminum block into a can, turned it out, installed a few small gears, and built this power connection to the rear himself, which means he created a bevel gear to get this power connection to the back. He traveled for several years with this motorcycle, which had a huge sidecar attached, registered, and right in the middle of Germany. And he died a natural death, not because he had an accident with his motorcycle due to some faulty weld or something like that, but everything worked perfectly until the end. And that is what truly fascinates us here, that there were people who created such incredible works of art out of necessity. And I had said to myself, back when we picked up the motorcycle, I had told all the stories about the machine and said, boy, I used to fetch the wood back in the forest with the big bio truck, and then those old wood gasifiers, 2001 trucks wouldn't start. And then they said, Werner, why don't you give it a try? And then I hitched my machine to it and pulled these little wooden gas trucks with it, with my machine. And then, yes, and here we also have such a beautiful, such a lovely little detail, which is the signal horn. And it is also brilliantly designed. A small and intricate toothed ring has been firmly riveted onto this delicate membrane of the horn, and from here a pin with a spring acts efficiently. And when I turn it here now, this pin ratchets from one tooth to the other. The ratchet sound is transmitted here through the membrane, amplified by this funnel 2001. And it all sounds like this. One could certainly attract deer or paint coffee with it, but you can also create nice acoustic signal sounds with it. Yes, and these are things that are simply brilliantly built and still functional after hundreds of years. That is the sustainability that continually fascinates us about these old things that were built and produced in the past. Yes, gnomes threaten. For those who don't know, that was a kind of wordplay. The dwarf at the run was meant to imply, translated a bit, to motorcycle or tank, that it was actually not a dwarf, but a giant. Yes, that's a bit about this motorcycle. I wanted to see if we could perhaps bring it to life here at our museum. So, he had a little syringe here. So, with the syringe, he sucked exactly 2 cubic centimeters of fuel from the tank and directly injected it into the combustion chamber. This is essentially the first fuel injector that ever existed. And now we have the Schmackgas here, right on site, where we need one. And now, this machine, which has been standing here for 10 years, should actually start on the first kick.
Where will she never go out again? Yes, let's calmly listen a bit more to the sound of this huge single-cylinder engine, 600cc from the year 1928. A dreamlike engine that NSU built, also used in the successful Model TS until 1908 and the 30s.
Yes, that can be fascinating, right? When this technology still works so fantastically after such an extremely long time. And up there, he is now looking down. Unfortunately, Werner passed away 3 years ago at the age of 91. But we promised him that we would honor his technology for as long as it is within our power. I think he has more than earned that. Yes. And in the next film, we will also take the motorcycle for a ride and introduce its special trailer here at the back. He completely built an engine himself in his workshop, a 4-stroke 250cc engine with the engine halves, cylinder, everything made by himself. And we will present that again later in a separate little film. Yes, we will often be here now with such crazy techniques, venerable old techniques on site. If you like it, feel free to give us a like or visit us more often, and also come by live here at the museum for a nice tour. Until then, rock and roll.